Okay, so now we're going to start adding some finer details in here. The basics that you're learning here will help you model almost anything you can imagine. And you've already learned many of the basics. So I'm going to get another cube here. I'm going to start modeling out some of these things. And it's maybe time consuming, but it's not super hard. I'm going to scale this down, move it over here into position on my object. Move it up towards the top and move it over. Now, what I need to do is have it extend over here. So I'm actually going to select this face and extrude it. Control E, move it over just a little bit. Then I need to select that face, Control E, and move it over just like that. Okay, so now I've kind of got a bracket thing going. It's going to add a lot, though, if I don't keep these very square, if I add some curves and stuff to them. So I basically need to add more detail to do that. So a lot of ways to add detail. What I can do is I can go back to object mode here, and I can insert edge loops. So mesh tools and insert edge loop. And I can just kind of go crazy here, adding a bunch of detail like this. Now, that's one way of doing it. I don't necessarily want to do it that way though. There's another way to do it where I could just add divisions. If I just go to object mode here and I add divisions, I can get tons of divisions there. Also not what I want to do because I've got a bunch of extra divisions here where I don't need them. So what am I going to do here? Well, I'm actually going to extrude. So I'm going to select my model here. I'll go to face right here. I'm going to push this way back. Same thing over here. Take this face, push it way back. And I'm actually going to use extrude. So how's that going to work? Well, I'm going to select this right here, and I'm going to go up to mesh, edit mesh. I'm going to click on this box here, extrude, and then I'm going to add like, I don't know, 10 divisions right here and hit extrude. And now when I move this out, I've been given some detail to work with there. I'll do the same thing over here. I'll control E and then move it out and get some more lines there. That way I don't get detail anywhere or everywhere where I don't need it. So now we can go in and I can select edges, like these edges for instance, and I can move them down a little bit like that, and I can start creating some detail in here just by moving around a bunch of edges. Okay. And then if I wanted this to round out like that, I could once again I could extrude. However, I want to make sure that I go into my extrude here and I change this from 10 to something like maybe 4. I'll hit extrude there, and then I can just kind of scale that one down, and I can take these polys here and I can scale them down a little bit. I can take these edges right here and scale them down a little bit and try to make it more round. And I could spend a ton of time on that. I'm not going to, but you feel free to put in the amount of detail that you think makes it look good. But if I add a bunch of little detail in here, it's going to really make my project look that much better. So I'll hit scale on those, scale them down a little bit. Just adding a little bit of extra detail, and it goes a long way. Extrude that, scale, go to edge mode, select some of these edges, scale them in a bit. Okay, and once I get one of these done, then I can duplicate it out and use it all over the place. So that's another benefit. It looks to me like I need to scale these down as well. Okay, and now I need to add one of these little bolts here. We have a whole lot of bolts to work with, so I'll just take one of these, Control D, make sure I'm in object mode, Control D, and move it over. Something like that. I definitely want to scale this bracket thing down quite a bit. Maybe move it down closer to the edge there. Put this bolt on it. Again, this may seem tedious, but once I get one done, then I can duplicate it out as many times as I want. And that's the real power of 3D. You do one and you duplicate it out. I'm gonna rotate that back 90. Rotate that in the Z 90. Okay, so we're having some problems rotating this. Every time we rotate it, look what happens. It scales all weird. Why is that? That's super annoying. You're going to run into this problem. Luckily, I know exactly what the problem is. This object right here is parented to something, and so when we rotate it like this, it's causing us all kinds of grief. So I'm going to undo my rotate there. I'm going to select this right here, this bolt, and I'm going to unparent it real quick by just middle mouse button dragging it out. Now when I rotate it, it rotates nicely, doesn't scale, it's not weird at all. I can go over here to the channel box editor and make sure it's rotated by 90. There we go. And I will reparent it again in just a second when I get it right where I want it. So there's a lot to learn about Maya. There really is. I'll scale it up a little bit. But you will learn, you'll get better at using it, and you'll start to master the software, and you'll feel empowered to build anything you want. So now we have this going on here. I'll make sure I put that bolt, middle mouse drag it back into the chest top here. In fact, I'd like to get this bracket all organized real quick. So I have this polycube. I will rename it bracket. And then I'll make sure that these two bolts are parented underneath the bracket. Like that. And we should definitely be cleaning up this as we go. It's very important. So now I can take this bracket right here, and I should be able to just duplicate it, Control D, move it down somewhere in there. Okay, and I can also take them and duplicate them over here, rotate them by about negative 90, move that into place like that. Want to get it as close to perfect as possible, maybe like that. Then I'll Control D and move it right down again. I want to make sure that these two are aligned pretty good. Looks like I got to go up just a bit with this towards the grid, like that. Okay, so it still looks rough. Most of that's because we haven't textured yet. We still need to texture and add kind of a bump map or a normal map to it. That'll add quite a bit of detail and make it look really good. But we're getting closer. Hopefully you guys are learning a lot and feeling very confident about your Maya skills. You're learning to navigate around and go through and change component selection modes on the fly. So in the next lesson we'll continue, and hopefully we'll finish this up real quick, and then we'll start texturing. I'll see you then.